Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at Attention is All You Need,
Oh yeah, this paper.
a paper
This
that's
big one.
really set the stage for a lot of the advancements that we've seen in machine learning and specifically natural language processing.
Yeah.
So we're going to break down the transformer,
Right.
which is a new architecture that has become kind of essential in how we work with language and AI.
Absolutely. I mean, this paper basically said, everything you thought you knew about natural language processing,
Yeah.
throw it out the window.
Yeah.
We're going to do things differently now. And up to this point, it was all about, very complex networks,
Right.
like recurrent neural networks or convolutions to really try and handle the complexities of language.
Right, that makes sense. Language is very complex.
Yeah.
So what were the limitations of those older models?
So imagine you're trying to translate a sentence,
Okay.
word by word.
Yeah.
You understand the current word, only based on the words that came before it. It's like reading a book, but you can only see one page at a time.
Okay.
That's basically how these traditional models worked, especially RNNs.
Okay, so they were very sequential
Very sequential.
and very much like, okay, I'm going to look at this word based on what I just saw.
Exactly.
But language isn't always like that.
Right.
Sometimes you have to look back a lot further back.
Exactly. And that's where these sequential models really struggled.
Yeah.
The longer the sentence, the harder it was for them to remember what came before.
Okay.
It's like trying to remember details from the first chapter of a book when you're halfway through.
You've forgotten it all?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they had this very limited memory, and they were also very slow and difficult to train.
Right, because each step has to wait for the previous one to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's
Especially with large data sets.
especially with large data sets.
Yeah.
Okay.
And comes along this paper.
Yeah.
Attention is all you need.
It's like, wait a minute. What if we could see the whole book at once?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The transformer completely abandons this step-by-step approach,
Okay.
and it introduces this idea of attention,
Okay.
which allows the model to look at all the words in the sentence simultaneously,
Okay.
regardless of their position.
Got it.
So it's like you have this bird's eye view of the entire text,
Right.
and you can instantly see how all the pieces fit together.
So rather than reading the sentence like a human would,
Yeah.
it's like, boom, the whole thing at once.
Exactly.
Okay, so attention lets it see the whole picture.
Yeah.
How does attention actually work, though?
So it's all about focusing on what matters most.
Okay.
Let's say you're translating a sentence,
Yeah.
and you come across the word it,
Okay.
instead of just looking at the words immediately around it.
Right.
The attention mechanism allows the model to scan the entire sentence
Okay.
and figure out which other words are most relevant to understanding the meaning of it.
Okay, so it's like the model is saying, okay, what is it referring to here?
Exactly.
And it's looking through all the other words to figure out what is the most relevant.
Precisely. And it
Yeah.
does this through this mechanism called scaled dot product attention,
Okay.
which basically calculates a score for each word in the sentence
Okay.
that reflects how closely related it is to the word it.
Got it.
And then it uses these scores to create a weighted average
Okay.
of all the other word representations.
So some words get more weight, some words get less weight,
Exactly.
depending on how related they are to that word in question.
It's like the model is highlighting the most important parts of the sentence
Yeah.
for understanding that particular word.
And that scaling part.
Oh, that's super important.
Yeah.
Because it prevents the model from getting too fixated on a single word.
Okay.
And it ensures that it maintains this kind of balanced understanding of the entire sentence.
Right. It's considering everything, but it's
Yeah.
like, okay, this one's a little more important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a safeguard
Yeah.
to keep the model focused on the big picture.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
But we've been talking about one attention head.
Right.
The real power of the transformer is when we have multiple heads
You're absolutely right.
working together.
They introduced this concept of multi-head attention,
Yeah.
which is basically like having a team of experts
Okay.
all looking at the sentence from different angles.
Got it.
So one head might be looking for relationships between subjects and verbs.
Okay.
Another head might be analyzing pronouns and how they connect to their nouns,
Okay.
and so on.
So it's like different sets of those weighted averages that we were talking about.
Exactly.
Each one is like looking at a different
Different aspects.
aspect of the sentence.
Exactly.
Okay, so
It gives you this much richer understanding.
right, it's like getting multiple perspectives on the same thing.
Exactly like how we as humans
Yeah.
analyze language. We
Right.
don't just focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
We're looking at the big picture.
Okay, so we've gotten rid of the sequential processing. We've introduced attention.
Right.
But how do we keep track of the order of the words?
That's a great question, and that's where positional encoding comes in.
Positional encoding.
Yes.
Okay.
So think about it.
Yeah.
Without that step-by-step approach,
Right.
the model wouldn't know that the cat sat on the mat
Yeah.
is different from the mat sat on the cat.
Totally different.
Right. So they needed a way to give each word a sense of place within the sentence.
Okay, so like a little tag that says this is word number 1.
Exactly.
This is word number 2.
Exactly. So that the model can process everything at once,
Okay,
but still understand the order.
got it.
And they do this by using sine and cosine functions.
Sine and cosine.
Yes.
Like from trigonometry.
You got it.
It might seem strange.
Yeah, what does that have to do with language?
Right, but these functions create these wave-like patterns
Okay.
that essentially give each position in the sentence a unique signature.
Oh, so each word gets its own little code
Exactly.
based on its position.
Exactly.
And that helps the model keep track of the word order,
Even though it's seeing it all at once.
even though it's seeing it all at once.
I love how they're using math to represent something that seems so abstract as language.
It's really clever.
Yeah, it is really clever.
Yeah, and it's this attention to detail
Yeah,
that makes the transformer so powerful.
this is a lot.
It is.
I think we should pause here and let the listener kind of digest all this.
Yeah, take a break.
We've talked about the limitations of those traditional models.
Yeah,
We've talked about this magic of attention
right.
and this very clever positional encoding.
It is very clever.
But there's still more to the transformer.
There's a lot more.
So we're going to pick it up in the next part of our deep dive.
So we've talked about attention. We've talked about positional encoding. Now let's get to the heart of what makes the transformer so powerful.
Okay.
And that is self-attention.
Self-attention. So the model is paying attention to itself.
Yes, in a sense.
That sounds very meta.
It is. It's very meta, but it's also very powerful.
How does that work?
So remember how we talked about attention as this way for the model to figure out which words are most relevant to each other?
Yeah.
Well, self-attention is applying that same principle, but within a single sentence.
Okay.
So each word is looking at all the other words in the sentence
Okay.
and figuring out how they all relate to its own meaning.
So in our example, the cat sat on the mat.
Right.
The word cat is not just looking at the and sat.
Right.
It's also looking at on, the, and mat.
Exactly. It's like each word is having a conversation with all the other words in the sentence.
To figure out what its role is.
Exactly.
Right.
And this allows for a much deeper understanding of the sentence as a whole.
Okay. But didn't those other models, those RNNs and convolutional layers,
Right.
didn't they already do something similar, like look at relationships between words?
They did to some extent, but self-attention has some key advantages.
Okay.
First off, it's incredibly efficient,
Good.
especially when you're dealing with longer sentences. Because RNNs, remember, they process things step by step.
Yeah.
So the longer the sentence gets, the slower they get.
Right.
Self-attention, on the other hand, can process everything in parallel.
Got it.
So it's much faster.
Because each word is looking at every other word at the same time.
Exactly. It doesn't have to wait
Right.
for the previous words to be processed.
So it's like this parallel processing powerhouse.
Exactly. And that makes it much easier to train these models on massive data sets.
Right, because you can do it all at once.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about those long-range dependencies?
Ah, yes. That's another area where self-attention shines.
Because sometimes words that are far apart in a sentence
Right.
still have a relationship with each other.
Exactly. And RNNs often struggle with that because
Yeah.
their memory is so limited.
Okay.
But self-attention can see the entire sentence at once, so
Right.
it can easily capture those long-range relationships.
It's like having that bird's eye view again.
Exactly.
It can see everything.
And this is crucial for understanding the nuances of language.
Right, because sometimes one word at the beginning of a paragraph can completely change the meaning
Exactly.
of something at the end.
Exactly.
Okay, so self-attention is faster.
Yes.
It's more efficient.
Yes.
It's better at handling those long-range dependencies.
Yes.
It's no wonder this made such a splash.
It was a game changer.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about getting better results on benchmarks.
Okay.
It was about fundamentally changing how we approach language modeling.
It was a new way of thinking about the problem.
Exactly.
And did this new way of thinking actually lead to better results?
Absolutely. When they tested the transformer on translation tasks,
Okay.
both English to German and English to French,
Yeah.
it shattered previous records.
What kind of records are we talking about?
So on the English to German task,
Okay.
their best transformer model achieved a BLEU score.
And BLEU score, that's how you measure.
That's how you measure the accuracy
You know.
of a machine translation. They achieved a score of 28.4.
Okay.
which was significantly better than anything that had come before.
Wow. And what about their base model?
Even their base model.
The one that didn't use as many resources.
Exactly.
Was that better than the previous state-of-the-art?
It was still better than many of the previous models,
Wow.
including some that used ensembles.
Ensembles. What's an ensemble?
So that's where you combine multiple models together
Okay.
to try to get the best possible results.
So one transformer model was better than a whole team of other models?
Essentially, yes.
Wow. Okay. What about English to French?
On English to French, they achieved a BLEU score of 41.
Okay.
Again, much better than anything that had come before.
And how long did it take to train these models?
Well, that was the other impressive thing.
Okay.
It was much faster than previous models.
So they were more accurate and they were faster.
Exactly. It was a win-win.
Wow. Okay. So we've seen that it's really good at translation,
Yeah.
but they didn't just stop there, did they?
Yeah. No, they also applied the transformer to a task called English constituency parsing.
Okay. What is that?
So that's where you take a sentence
Yeah.
and you break it down into its grammatical components,
Oh, okay.
like noun phrases, verb phrases, and so on.
So it's like diagramming a sentence.
Exactly.
Okay.
And surprisingly, it also did very well on this task.
So it wasn't just a one-trick pony.
Exactly. It could generalize to other language tasks.
Now I'm wondering, what are its limitations?
That's a great question. And to be honest, it's still early days.
Okay.
There are definitely challenges. Well, for example, it can still struggle with very specialized language.
Okay.
Or with things like sarcasm,
Yeah.
where you really need to understand the context.
So there's still things that humans are better at.
Absolutely. But the field is constantly evolving,
Right.
and researchers are already working on ways to address these limitations.
So the transformer itself was a revolution,
It was.
but it also sparked all this other research,
Exactly.
which is pretty amazing.
It's really exciting to see where this technology is going.
Yeah, before we move on, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier
Okay.
about visualizing those attention distributions.
Right.
What does that even mean? Can you actually see what the model is paying attention to?
The researchers developed these techniques to visualize which words the model is focusing on
Okay.
for each attention head.
And what did they find?
What they found was fascinating.
Okay.
It turns out that different attention heads seem to specialize in different linguistic tasks.
So like different parts of the model's brain are doing different jobs.
Exactly.
Hmm.
For example, some heads were really good at figuring out what pronouns refer to.
Like he or she.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is called anaphora resolution.
Okay.
Other heads seem to be more focused on understanding the overall grammatical structure of the sentence.
So it's like a team of linguists working together.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It's as if the model is developing its own internal understanding of grammar. And these visualizations weren't just pretty pictures.
Okay.
They actually gave us real insights into how the transformer works.
So it's like we can peek inside the mind of the machine.
In a way, yes.
That's pretty cool.
It is, and it highlights this important idea that
Yeah.
we need to understand not just what AI models can do,
Right.
but also how they work.
Right.
Because if we understand how they work, then we can build better models.
Yeah.
We can address potential biases.
Right.
And we can ensure that these technologies are used responsibly.
That's a really important point. Yeah, I think sometimes we get so caught up in the excitement
Yeah,
of new technology
right.
that we forget that it's only as good as the people who are creating it and using it.
Exactly. And the ethical considerations of AI are becoming increasingly important
Yeah.
as these technologies become more powerful.
Right.
But that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
For now, let's focus on the impact of the transformer.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so we've talked about the limitations of those old models, the
That-
ones that came before.
Right.
We've talked about attention and self-attention.
Yes.
And even a bit about the ethics of AI.
Right.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
But I'm really curious to hear more about the impact of the transformer. Like, what other things has it influenced?
Well, the impact has been huge. I mean, one of the things that's so cool about the transformer is that it's not just limited to language.
Okay.
Researchers are using it in all sorts of fields like image recognition and speech processing,
Right.
and even things like protein folding.
Protein folding, that seems like a pretty big leap from translating languages.
It does. But if you think about it, proteins are kind of like sentences.
Right.
They're made up of these building blocks called amino acids.
Yeah.
And the sequence of those amino acids determines how the protein folds into this 3D shape.
Okay.
And that shape determines its function.
Right.
So the transformer, with its ability to understand these long-range dependencies, can actually analyze those sequences and predict how they're going to fold.
So it's like using the grammar of protein sequences to figure out their shapes.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. And how successful has it been?
The early results are really promising. I
Okay.
mean, transformers are already helping scientists understand diseases and develop new drugs.
Wow.
It's really incredible how a model that was designed for language translation
Yeah,
is now helping us unlock these secrets of life itself.
it really shows you how powerful this technology is.
It does.
So what other surprises does the Transformer have in store for us?
Well, that's the exciting part. We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah,
As researchers continue to explore and refine the transformer,
right.
I think we can expect to see even more innovative applications in the years to come.
It's like opening a door to a whole new world.
Exactly.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive.
It,
We've learned so much about the Transformer
we have.
and its impact on AI and beyond.
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating journey.
It has, and for our listener, if you want to learn more, I highly recommend checking out the original paper, Attention is All You Need.
Oh, yeah, it's a must read.
It really is. It's a groundbreaking work that has transformed the field of AI.
Absolutely.
And with that, we wrap up our deep dive into the Transformer. Thanks for listening.
It's been a pleasure.
It has been great having you.